Hello everyone, welcome to another episode in this series on the history of Serbia and the Serbian people. In the previous one, I talked about the history of the peoples who inhabited the territory of Serbia during prehistory and antiquity. If you missed it, I suggest that you pause this video and watch that one first. This time, we will cover the history of Serbia in the early Middle Ages and also learn why in the Harry Potter universe the Balkan School of Magic should be located in eastern Serbia. Let's get started. Serbs are one of the Slavic peoples. The origins of the Slavs are shrouded in mystery due to the scarcity of written sources, as it was not until the 9th century that the Slavs began producing their own texts. Ancient Roman and Greek sources mention peoples who are believed to have been Slavs, but they truly emerge onto the world stage in the 5th and 6th centuries during the migration period, that is, late antiquity. The original homeland of the Slavs was likely located north of the Carpathian Mountains, between the upper courses of the Vistula and Dnieper rivers, encompassing parts of modern-day Poland, Ukraine and Belarus. From there, the Slavs began expanding, settling lands previously inhabited by various Germanic peoples who had been pushed westward by the Huns in the 4th and 5th centuries. The Slavs expanded in three general directions: west, east and south. We will be primarily concerned with those who went south, the South Slavs, who settled in the Balkan Peninsula, since Serbs belonged to this group. At the beginning of the 6th century, the Balkan Peninsula was primarily controlled by the Roman Empire, or more precisely, its eastern remnant, after the fall of the Western Empire in 476. The westernmost part of the peninsula was ruled by the Germanic Ostrogoths, who had taken over Italy, while the Pannonian plain north and east of the Danube was controlled by another Germanic people, the Gepids. The first Slavic raids of the Balkans occurred during the reign of Emperor Justin, the predecessor of Justinian. Although it is possible that they had happened earlier, since the Romans sometimes confused the Slavs with other peoples who lived beyond the lower Danube, such as the Scythians. Initially, the Slavs appear to have been interested only in looting, as they kept returning to the region around the mouth of the Danube after each raid. This was the situation throughout much of the 6th century. In the sources, the Slavs are described as numerous but disunited. Individual tribes might band together for a raid, but they could not organize a conquest, and in fact posed a greater danger to the empire when invading together with another people, the Avars, nomads from the Eurasian steppe. The Avars also appeared on the historical scene in the 6th century, dislodging the Gepids from the Pannonian basin. Their relations with the neighboring Slavs ranged from cooperation to hostility and subjugation. When they acted together, the Avars as cavalrymen and the Slavs as infantrymen, they could penetrate deep into the Balkan Peninsula, causing plenty of trouble to the Romans. The Romans were no sitting ducks, managing to occasionally deal serious blows to the invaders. However, they faced other challenges at the same time: the Persians in the east and the Goths and Lombards in the west. Although Justinian is considered one of the greatest Roman emperors because he succeeded in retaking some parts of the Western Roman Empire from the Goths and Vandals, including Italy and the city of Rome, this restoration came at a great cost. The wars of reconquest depleted the treasury while simultaneously creating new enemies. The empire also suffered a major demographic blow during his reign because of a plague known as the Plague of Justinian, which claimed many lives. The empire's inability to recruit and pay a sufficient number of soldiers to deal with all of its many enemies allowed the Avars and the Slavs to increase the frequency of their campaigns over the course of the 6th century. The devastation and displacement of the native population of the Balkans eroded Roman control over the peninsula and allowed the Slavs to start migrating south of the Danube. The complete collapse of Roman rule in the Balkans occurred in the first half of the 7th century. This was a time when the empire almost ceased to exist. In the Byzantine-Sasanian War of 602 to 628, the Persians succeeded in occupying the Levant, Egypt and much of Asia Minor, and in 626 they besieged Constantinople together with the Slavs and Avars. The Romans, under the brilliant Emperor Heraclius, emerged victorious in this epic conflict, but this miracle did not last long, as soon they had to face a new force that would reshape the world: Islam. The exhausted Roman Empire, which from now on I will refer to as the Byzantine Empire, since that is what historians call the medieval form of this state, could no longer keep at bay the tide coming from the north. Thus, in the 7th century, almost the entire Balkan peninsula came under Slavic influence, including such places as the Peloponnese. This did not mean that the native population was swept away. Rather, the Romanized Thracians, Dacians, and Illyrians sought refuge in the mountains, surrendering the plains and valleys to the Slavs and adopting a herding lifestyle. Gradually, over the course of the Middle Ages, they merged with the Slavs. However, not all of them would assimilate, and eastern Serbia is famous for being home to many Vlachs, or Vlasi as they are referred to. They are particularly interesting as they have preserved some aspects of their pre-Christian culture in the form of rituals believed to have supernatural effects. They are known for their love spells, prophetic abilities, and the power to inflict and remove curses. This cultural heritage and the mountainous terrain make eastern Serbia the ideal location for a Balkan school of magic. Now, let us leave whimsy behind and return to our history lesson. We left off at the collapse of Byzantine rule in the Balkans. It is exactly at this turning point that the Serbs appeared. As with the general history of the Slavs in this period, the first few centuries of Serbian history are obscure due to the lack of written sources. The most important of the few accounts is the Administrando Imperio on imperial administration, the work of the Byzantine scholar Emperor Constantine VII Porphyrogenitus. According to his account, the Serbs came to the Balkans from the north during the reign of Emperor Heraclius. This northern homeland was possibly located somewhere in modern-day Czechia, as several geographic features in both Serbia and Czechia share names, the most famous example being the Morava rivers. Constantine VII also refers to a region called Bojki, which could be derived from the Boii, a Celtic tribe inhabiting Czechia in antiquity. Constantine VII also tells how the Serbs were divided by two brothers who went their separate ways. And it so happens that eastern Germany is the homeland of a West Slavic people called the Sorbs. Constantine VII then recounts that the Serbs asked Emperor Heraclius to provide them with land to settle in his empire. He granted them territory in the vicinity of Thessaloniki. The Serbs, however, decided to return home. But somewhere along the way, they changed their minds again and petitioned the emperor once more to grant them land. This time, he allowed them to establish themselves between the Sava River and the Dinaric Alps. This territory encompassed modern-day western Serbia and eastern Bosnia. For the next 2 centuries of Serbian history, all that Constantine VII tells us is who succeeded the leader who brought the Serbs to the Balkans. For some rulers, he does not provide names, while for others, he gives almost no details. He claims that they all belong to the same family as the unknown Archon, which is how historians refer to the first leader of the Serbs. Časlav is the first Serbian monarch whose name is recorded, and because of that, the line of rulers starting from the unknown Archon is sometimes referred to as the Višeslavić dynasty. Prince Časlav was a contemporary of Charlemagne and was succeeded by Radoslav and Prosigoj, who were involved with Ljudevit Posavski, the leader of the Slavs in what is roughly the Slavonia region of modern-day Croatia, who rebelled against the Franks. The first named Serbian ruler whose reign we know in more detail was Prince Vlastimir. Constantine VII mentions that Vlastimir fought a 3-year-long defensive war against the Bulgarian Khan Presian. He does not specify when exactly this war took place, but it must have been between 836 and 852, the years of Presian's reign. I will now seize the opportunity to introduce the Bulgarians, as they would be the Serbs' main adversaries throughout the 9th, 10th and 11th centuries. Similarly to the Avars, the Bulgarians, or Bulgars as they were also called, were a nomadic tribe from the Eurasian steppe. They raided the Balkans during late antiquity, but permanently settled in the region in the year 680. They established dominion over the Slavic tribes inhabiting the lower Danube valley between the Balkan mountains to the south and the Carpathians to the north. As they were not particularly numerous, they did not displace these Slavs, but instead positioned themselves as the ruling elite. Over time, They assimilated into the Slavic majority, adopting their language and customs, while the tribes they subjugated adopted their name. Let us return to Prince Vlastimir. As he is the first Serbian ruler whose life is recorded in greater detail, the Časlavić dynasty is actually more often referred to as the Vlastimirović dynasty. Apart from successfully repelling the Bulgarian invasion, he is also credited with expanding his realm across the Dinaric Alps by incorporating the coastal principalities of Zahumlje, Travunia, and Pagania. In Serbian historiography, these three principalities, together with Duklja, are considered to have also been Serbian realms. Unfortunately, little is known of their history, but it is entirely possible that they were inhabited by distinct Slavic tribes who occasionally recognized the rulers of Serbia as their overlords, leading gradually to greater political integration and absorption into the larger Serbian tribe. After all, the various Slavic tribes scattered across Central and Eastern Europe and the Balkans at this time were not yet the distinct ethnic groups that we know today. They still practiced the religion they had brought from their original homeland and spoke essentially the same language. They were only beginning to experience the historical processes and establish the institutions and customs that would shape them into modern nations. Prince Vlastimir was succeeded by his three sons, who divided his realm among themselves. Mutimir, the eldest, was the official monarch, while Strojmir and Gojnik were his vassals. Initially, they cooperated, repelling an attack by the Bulgarian Khan Boris. However, relations between the three soured quickly. Strojmir and Gojnik rebelled against Mutimir, who defeated them and sent them into exile in Bulgaria. This would be a source of much trouble for the Serbs over the following decades. Mutimir's reign coincided with that of the Byzantine Emperor Basil I. Over the previous 2.5 centuries, contact between the Serbs and the Byzantines had been minimal, as Byzantine possessions in the Balkans had been reduced to a handful of strongholds on the coast. After undertaking internal reforms, most notably establishing the famous thematic provincial system, the Byzantines began a campaign to reclaim lost territories. By the start of Basil's reign, they had retaken eastern Thrace, Macedonia, Greece, and Epirus, and they had also consolidated into the theme of Dalmatia the fortified cities on the Adriatic coast that had survived the Slavic onslaught and remained part of the empire. Thus, the Byzantines and the Serbs came into direct contact. From their stronghold of Dyrrhachium and the Dalmatian cities, they began exercising influence. While the Serbian princes recognized the suzerainty of Basil I, this was only nominal. The relationship with the Byzantine emperor provided them with prestige, served to legitimize their rule, and deterred rival claimants. At the same time, both sides faced the threat of a Bulgaria that had expanded across the eastern and central Balkans and into the Pannonian Basin. Directly occupying the Serbian principalities was not a Byzantine priority at this time, nor was it feasible. What was a Byzantine priority was spreading their religious and cultural presence as a stepping stone to greater political influence. In 862, Rastislav, the prince of the West Slavic Great Moravia, requested that Emperor Michael III send missionaries to evangelize his people, in an attempt to curb the growing influence of Bavarian missionaries who undermined his sovereignty. The ecumenical patriarch Photius selected two brothers, now known as Saints Cyril and Methodius. They were from Thessaloniki, which had a large Slavic hinterland, and they spoke the Slavic language. For their mission, they needed to translate the scriptures into Slavic, and so they created a script suited to the language, the Glagolitic alphabet. However, it turned out to be too complicated, and their disciples later developed one that proved more practical and enduring, the Cyrillic alphabet. The mission of Cyril and Methodius was not entirely successful. Although Great Moravia converted to Christianity, it eventually fell under the influence of the Roman Pope. And it was at this time the first signs of the future schism between the Pope and the ecumenical patriarch of Constantinople began to emerge. However, the Byzantines managed to score a victory closer to home when the Bulgarian Khan Boris officially adopted Christianity from Constantinople. It appears that the Serbs also converted to Christianity around this time, as evidenced by one of Prince Mutimir's sons and his nephew bearing Christian names. However, this was not an overnight event, but rather a centuries-long process. It is more likely that initially only the nobility adopted Christianity, while the common people kept their pagan beliefs, as evidenced by many customs that survive to this day, with Christian saints assuming aspects of earlier Slavic gods. Despite Bulgaria's conversion to Byzantine Christianity, tensions between the two Balkan powers remained, and one of their battlegrounds was Serbia, where both tried to gain influence by supporting different members of the Vlastimirović dynasty. In 891 or 92, Prince Vlastimir died and was succeeded by his eldest son Pribislav. He was, however, overthrown by his cousin Petar, the son of the exiled Gojnik. Before his rebellion, Petar had been living in Croatia. Pribislav and his two younger brothers now fled there. Then Bran, the second brother, attempted to dethrone Petar but failed and was blinded by his cousin. Petar's rule was later challenged by Clonimir, the son of his uncle Strojmir, who was likely supported by the new Bulgarian ruler Simeon as he invaded from that direction. He also failed to seize power. Meanwhile, Simeon of Bulgaria began his reign by inflicting a significant defeat on the Byzantines, which led to a peace that lasted until 913. The result of this conflict was the settlement of the Magyars, that is, the Hungarians, in the Pannonian Plain. At that time, the Hungarians inhabited the steppe between the Carpathians and the Dnieper River. The Byzantines had allied with them against the Bulgarians, but the Bulgarians allied with another steppe people, the Pechenegs. The Hungarians ended up caught between the two and were forced to migrate west. In his next war with the Byzantines, in the famous Battle of Enkilos, Simeon was once again victorious, which eventually helped him force the Byzantines to recognize him as Emperor of the Bulgarians in 925. This was of major political and symbolic importance, as it went against the Byzantine Universalist conception of the world. Namely, as there is only one God in heaven, so could there be only one supreme ruler on earth, the Roman Emperor in Constantinople. There might be kings and princes, but all were expected to defer to him. This claim was not completely undermined, particularly in the Orthodox world, but it showed that Byzantine authority could be challenged, inspiring other ambitious rulers in the future. Now, let us return to the Serbian Prince Petar, who appears to have taken the Byzantine side in the renewed conflict between Bulgaria and the Byzantine Empire. Learning of this, Simeon dispatched an army against him in 917. In that army was Pavle, the son of Petar's cousin Bran, who had earlier tried to dethrone him. Faced with the overwhelming Bulgarian force, Petar entered negotiations, but it was only a ruse. He was captured and taken to Bulgaria, where he died, while Pavle succeeded him. Pavle was soon challenged by Zacharia, the son of Pribislav, supported by the Byzantines. He defeated his cousin, sending him into exile in Bulgaria. However, Pavle soon changed sides himself, which prompted Simeon to dispatch another army to Serbia, this time installing Zacharia on the throne. The new prince also proved unfaithful to Simeon, as he quickly recognized the Byzantine emperor as his suzerain. Simeon once again sent an army to Serbia. This one was defeated, but the loss seems only to have motivated the Bulgarian emperor to deal with the Serbs once and for all. In 924, Simeon sent one more expeditionary force. Another member of the Vlastimirović dynasty was involved, Časlav, the son of Clonimir, and it appeared that the Bulgarians would once again attempt to place their man on the Serbian throne. They, however, used him as a bait to gather and capture the Serbian nobility. What ensued was a complete disaster. The Bulgarians pillaged the land, taking many people into captivity in Bulgaria, while others fled to neighboring lands. Sources, though exaggerated, indicate that the country was significantly depopulated. Bulgarian domination of Serbia did not last long. Emperor Simeon died in 927 and was succeeded by his son Peter, a ruler who fell under Byzantine influence. People who had fled Serbia began to return, and Časlav became the new prince. He spent his reign working to repair the damage of the last Bulgarian invasion. He would, however, be the last known Vlastimirović to rule Serbia. After settling in the Pannonian Plain, the Hungarians followed in the footsteps of previous nomadic peoples who had inhabited that region, the Avars and the Huns, and devoted themselves to raiding neighboring lands. In the 10th century, they destroyed the West Slavic realm of Great Moravia and conducted campaigns across Europe. Serbia also found itself in their path. After a skirmish in which a notable Hungarian leader was killed, the Hungarians decided to retaliate. In a battle somewhere in the Matva region of Serbia, Časlav was captured and executed by being drowned in the river Sava. It is assumed that this happened sometime in the mid-900s. Časlav may not have been the last Vlastimirović, but the records of what was happening in Serbia in the following 150 years are scarce and often difficult to interpret. This was a period of great turmoil, primarily caused by the renewed conflict between the Bulgarians and the Byzantines, and that will be the topic of the next episode. Thank you for watching. If you want to learn how Serbian princes and the first kings navigated the dangerous Balkan political landscape of the 10th, 11th and 12th centuries, subscribe and click on the bell button to be notified about the next episode in this series on the history of Serbia and the Serbian people. And leave your impressions about this episode in the comment section. See you in the next one.